for today is employee performance management. And this is again a very useful and interesting topic in human resource management because somehow it has two objectives. First of all, it helps you to appraise and to evaluate the performance of your employees. And on the other hand, it is very useful because it helps you to contribute to the employees' development and to the employees' learning. So on the one hand, you help the employee in understanding the level, the performance level he or she has reached. And on the other hand, it helps you to come up with suggestions that help the employee in learning and developing. So the performance appraisal will be in a learning culture, a feedback, and will be part of the learning game. While in a power culture, in a company that focuses more on maybe punishing and just on rewarding the employee, it will be more focused on power because the appraisal process, evaluation process, in fact, is the means of power. You can control a lot of the employee's activity through this evaluation process. And when I say controlling and the power that the employer has, is not only by the means of the evaluation scores the employees get, but also by the means of the rewards that are sometimes associated with the performance appraisal and also with the evaluation criteria. Because when you establish the evaluation criteria, you influence a lot the employees' activities. And I will give you an example. For example, if I include in the evaluation criteria, so the criteria that you use in the evaluation forms and above that you use to evaluate your employees, for example, if you have attendance or absenteeism, or if you have a more this being present, being there criteria, that will influence the employees and they will make the employees be there and just follows those criteria. On the other hand, if you have in your evaluation criteria indicators or key performance indicators such as helping the others or being friendly with the customer or being helpful to the customer or being open to innovative ideas or being open to new ideas, then you will influence them to be more open and to focus more on skills or soft skills that are really helpful for their job performance. So that means that the criteria that you use in your evaluations are really influencing the activities that your employees perform. When we talk about performance evaluation, you have a cycle of several steps that you have to go through. So first of all, you will start from the goals that you have at the organization level. So what are the objectives of your organization? And starting from here, you will cascade and set objectives at the employees level. As a first action, you will plan some objectives. What do you want? Or what do you aim to get at your employees level? These objectives, as a best practice, it's good to be agreed with your employees and to be established together with your employees. And these objectives are supposed to be SMART, but we'll talk about the SMART objectives that everyone knows already. Then, after you have some agreed plans, some agreed objectives, you will start acting and implementing to reach those objectives. Then what you have to do as a third step is to somehow monitor and track the progress and make sure that you give feedback and you help the employee along the way to implement the objectives. Because just this is the objectives and I want you to implement them and then do not interfere at all and do not support the employee on the way might not be that effective. At another level, you should review and evaluate and discuss the activities along the way and identify the learning and identify future objectives that could be again reached by the employee. So this evaluation process, this performance management cycle, should be a kind of a cyclical process, because what you want is implementation of certain objectives, and then learning, and then development. So you want to grow and to reach a different level in the end. The result of the performance appraisal is mainly that you provide feedback, and the feedback that you give to your employees is very useful. Unfortunately, the surveys that we have done on Romanian companies show us that most of the time the performance appraisal is only a 4-month process. You have the forms, the questionnaires, the supervisor, the boss is evaluating and gives the scores, gives the grades for the employees, but that's all. There is nothing else besides some formal grades that you get as an employee from your supervisor, which is not really helpful, because just being told that my score is 4 out of 5 does not tell me too much. On the other hand, what I would like to happen during a performance appraisal process is to provide feedback to your employees, and not any kind of feedback, but constructive feedback. And this is another issue that Romanian companies face, that when we give feedback is mostly when employees do mistakes. Because we are a more punitive culture, we are more a punishment culture. And it's again a lot easier to see when the employees make a mistake, and not to focus that much on the good sides, on the positive side of the employee's performance. So what I think the management should do now is to pay more attention to what's good and what's positive, and what's the progress the employees have done, and starting from that good sides to build on and try to improve the employee's activity. From my own experience, I can tell you that it's not, it's never enough to give positive feedback to the others. And I myself, I focused on giving positive feedback and in seeing the good side of the employees or the colleagues I have worked with. But I received feedback from them, you know what, it would be good to give, to tell us more the positive sides. And I was thinking, oh, but I was focusing on the positive side. But my conclusion was that it's never enough. And it's always, you can always do better in seeing the good side. But sometimes, on the other hand, you can fall in giving too much positive and being afraid to give the negative. So giving feedback means being very able, being paying enough attention to see both what's good and both what could be improved in your employees' activities. And this requires time, being available for the people you work with, and paying attention to what they do and trying to help them. Because the final end of a performance appraisal process should be helping the employee to develop. And that's why the evaluation process should be really linked to the development, employee development activities in your company, and then also linked to the rewards. And usually, based on the employees' performance appraisal scores, you should have also you should establish the rewards that you give to your employees, and you should relate these scores with personnel decisions, such as pay raises or training decisions or investment decisions related to in what area to train your employees. Also, the evaluation process could help you in deciding or in evaluating the correctness of the selection process, because sometimes during the performance appraisal you realize that in fact the mistake you did was in the early beginning when you hired the employee, because the employee does not fit the job, or that does not fit the company, or that does not fit the supervisor the employee is working with. So it might be an error that you made when you hired the employee, and you realize it when you do the performance appraisal. Another benefit of the performance appraisal process is that it motivates employees. If it's well done, if you do it the right way, it will help employees be motivated and work put more effort in doing the job. So it will stimulate the performance, especially if you establish the right evaluation criteria. Because as I said, if your criteria are mainly focused only on outputs, or let's say only on sales, on quantitative outputs, but not at all on the relationship with the customers or on the relationship with the other colleagues, peers in the company, on or having a positive attitude, then you might miss a lot from the performance of the employees and from the satisfaction the employees get through the activities they do. Um, so an important element when doing an evaluation process is setting the right evaluation criteria. So sometimes just having like a smile, nice smile is not so relevant for the performance of the employees, or the time, the deadlines. It's not all about the deadlines. It's also about the quality of the job that you do. Not only meeting the deadline, which is of course important, but also at what quality, at what standard do you meet those deadlines. So as I mentioned, the steps when you develop a performance management system is to establish what you want to measure. What are the criteria that you want to evaluate? Then to decide on how you will measure it. What tools will you use? Will it be a form? Will you have a meeting, evaluation meeting? Or how will you do this evaluation? Then you want to decide how often will you do this measurement? Will you have an yearly evaluation process? Will you have every month meeting evaluation with your employee? Will it be even more rare? In Romanian companies, unfortunately, we face difficulties on each of these areas. First of all, most of the companies, as I said, use only some evaluation questionnaires, and they do not have a meeting, or they do not have face-to-face meetings with the employees when doing the evaluation process, which is unfortunately quite in the disadvantage of the employees, because having a face-to-face meeting or having every month a face-to-face meeting between the supervisor and the employees is really useful for the employees. And from the surveys and from the experience that I have with the Romanian companies and the Romanian employees, a lot of them say that and admit are aware of the fact of having face-to-face meetings with the employees are very useful. And the employee satisfaction is increased, and they feel, you know what they say, that I feel more valuable. I feel that the company cares about me. I mentioned about sustainable HRM. Sustainable HRM, which means having an HRM process which is focused on long-term outcomes and which is focused on the employees and which is focused on the environment also, and which is focused on developing the employees. So the employees say, I feel that the company cares about me if when we have these face-to-face meetings, because in those face-to-face meetings, I have time to express my needs. I feel that the company cares about my input, about my feedback, about how I feel, about how I care about the company also. So it's a good opportunity to exchange information between the company and the employee. When we discuss about this performance evaluation, we could focus on traits, so on how the employee personality features, for example, or we could focus on behaviors, so how the employee behave, how do they act during their activities, or we can focus on outcomes, what do they achieve, the final outcomes. So somehow this performance appraisal should focus on each of them and pay attention to each of them, and not only on the employees' outcomes. When we use appraisal methods, we could use some relative methods of absolute judgment. I will give you some examples of methods that are considered to be relative, such ranking. So a ranking evaluation method means ranking all your employees on a scale from the worst employees to the best employees that you have. So just rank all the employees from the best one to the least performant ones. Another method is a paired comparison method, which actually involves comparing the employees. You just take employee A and employee B, and you just compare them and say, okay, A is better than employee B, and then you compare A with C, and you say C is better than A. Then you compare B with C, and you say B is better than C. So basically, you compare all the employees among them. A forced distribution method is another method that some companies use, but I'm not insisting too much on this method because they are very rarely used now. They are more theoretical methods just to understand how you could do the evaluation, but they are very rarely used in practice. Anyway, it's good to know about them. And forced distribution method means is a forced distribution. Basically, you say these are the best 10%, best 10 quartile percent of the best employees that I have. These are the 10% worst as the employees that I have in the company. Somehow it might be helpful in deciding, for example, if you implement a talent management system, or if you want to see which are the best 1% or 5% employees in your company because you want to invest more in them or because you want to reward better those employees. A tool in this area is the matrix, which divides and assigns your employees in a matrix with the low performance people and low potential people. Here you are interested to see not only who are the low performance ones, but also who are the low potential. So it's about performance on the job, current performance on the job, on potential. And I'm also interested in my employees' potential because the ones who have high potential, it means they could do something more besides the job they do. They could be promoted, for example, they could be advanced in a different position because they have a high potential for do something more and not only the job they are currently doing. So to understand this, high um, performance people are here, high performance and high potential. You have here on the axis performance and the axis potential, you have here the low performance but who are high potential. So the employees who have potential to do something better in your company but are very low performing the current job they have. So this means so that those employees have to switch jobs because they have good potential for something else in the company, but they are not performing the job they are doing now. So they should be switched on different jobs in on different positions that you have available in your company. These people should be moved. On the other hand, you have here high performance but very low potential, no potential. So in this case, the right corner low lower side, these are people who will not be promoted because they are doing very well what they are doing, but they do not have potential to grow or to move to a different job. So this matrix might help you to realize who are the potential people, who are the performant people in your company, who are both potential and performant, and might get something different in your company, might do something different in your company. This is the same matrix, but using colors, which again will help you make a promotion decision or other employee decisions related in your company. Absolute judgments tools are based on using more graphing rating scales. So from 1 to 10, you evaluate the performance of each employee. You have the critical incident method, means identify the critical incidents. These critical incidents are particular examples of behaviors the employees had, both positive or negative, that give you information about how good the employees are. And you'll note down when the employee do some very critical mistakes or do some critical positive, they have some very good outcomes, some outstanding, remarkable performance. and then you will note those downs because this is very useful and valuable for your company. Another very common method is behaviorally anchored scales. That means that you develop a kind of questionnaires that give you anchors uh, on the positive behaviors and negative behaviors. And they are very helpful because they help you understand what it means to have a good and positive behaviors, and what it means to have a very negative performance on the job. I will give you an example. Let's say that you are evaluating the relationship with the customers. So a behaviorally anchored scale will tell you on this dimension, relationship with the customers, the employee is helping the customers um, uh, even in requests that are not related to the job. So we'll try to help the customers a particular problem faced by the customer, even if this is not required by the job the employee performs. Another method is management by objectives, and here you establish the SMART goals, and we'll discuss about this management by objectives. And another method, which is very famous, is 360-degree feedback. This means using multiple raters, so multiple people will give feedback. And why? Because if you have feedback from several sides, so supervisor or customers or colleagues or subordinates, self-evaluation. So if you have multiple ratings, then the chances to have a more correct performance appraisal are higher. So it's more costly, it takes more resources and a longer time. But on the other hand, the benefit is that these multiple raters, multiple rating system will give you a more correct information in the end. And I'll give you an example. Let's say you implement only the evaluation done by the supervisor. In that case, it might be subjective, especially if the supervisor has some particular interest or has some particular dimension that he or she favors. Then that person, because of the subjective evaluation, might do a wrong assessment and might give maybe, let's say, wrong and not useful feedback to your employee. On the other hand, you might use a customer's feedback, which could be very helpful and give you a different side related to the performance of the employees, such as the employee is very helpful to the customer and you want to reward that. But on the other hand, the employee does not have a very good relationship with the supervisor and is not very, let's say, friendly to the supervisor. And because of this reason, the employee gets low evaluation scores. So having the feedback from the customer point of view might be useful, or having the feedback from the colleagues or for the other peers point of view might be very helpful, because it shows you that in fact the employee is very helpful to the other employee, is very friendly and open to their needs, and help them when they face challenges, or when they do not, where they are not able to solve a problem. You want to see this kind of skills at your employees. You want to see this kind of behaviors of your employees, because you want to encourage and reward these behaviors, because you need these helpful behaviors with your colleagues, or with the other colleagues in the company. So the 360-degree feedback might be helpful because it gives you a different perspective on the employee's performance. And on the other hand, I will give you an example related to peers evaluation, so colleagues evaluation. Let's say my colleague, the person who I work a lot with, is not really my fan. Like he doesn't or she doesn't like me that much, because I have been quite often in a negative mood when interacting with my colleague, or not. I have not been very helpful with my colleague. So I expect not to get a very good evaluation from my colleague side. Then I have another colleague I didn't have very good interactions with. So I expect she will not really like me because she's not my style. Then I have another colleague, which again I don't really like because she's not my type of person, you know. So I do not expect to have very good evaluation scores from that person also. So in the end, I might realize, you know what, these people will not evaluate me very well because these colleagues' evaluations are not really useful. But the thing is that if you have so many people around you that give you negative feedback and don't like you, that might mean something and could be very useful feedback for you to improve your activity. Even if they are subjective and we might say, you know what, these are not reliable people in giving feedback, in fact, they might be quite useful. So the conclusion is that having multiple raters and getting feedback from more people could be useful because it could help you see what you are not doing that well. So this management by objective process basically means starting from the organizational objectives and then cascading the objectives to the employee level. Of course, you have to monitor the way the employees implement those objectives and try to reward. But in an ideal system, the evaluation should be related to the rewards. And here in Romania, we have quite an issue because being a collectivist culture, being, let's say, having all these communist values in which you reward everyone at the same level because, for example, if you have a team means everyone has everyone is important at the same level of importance, then you might not want to reward people differently. But on the other hand, on a performance-based system, you might want to reward your employees based on the performance they have or based on the individual performance. And you might realize that even if you have a team and everyone is important in the team, of course everyone is important and everyone has various roles in the team, still you might realize that some people in the team are more important than the others, that you have some kind of critical or like most important roles in jobs or positions in the team that are extremely valuable for the team, and you might want to reward those people better. In the practical examples from Romanian companies, when you implement these performance systems and rewarding based on the employees' performance, you have to be very careful to make sure that it's the evaluation done and the criteria that you use are relevant and it is a transparent process and you evaluate in a very fair way the performance of the employees, because otherwise you will have a lot of complaints that the performance is not fair. Also, what I realized, if you have this rewarding based on performance, and if you just reward every year, you increase the salaries and you give bonuses, at some point you will notice that the employees expect a salary increase just because you have the evaluation process. And the evaluation process starts to be associated with rewards, increasing the rewards of your employees. So again, you have to be very, very careful when you reward um, the performance to make sure that you connect the performance with the reward that you get. In this management by objectives, I mentioned the SMART objectives, and I assume you already know about the SMART objectives, so I will not insist on that. That objective should be specific, so you should be able to specifically measure it. It should be attainable, so realistic for the employee. So it should not be so difficult to implement that I will not be able to implement it. It should be relevant. So I should see how it is useful, and that's what it makes the work meaningful for an employee. And also, it should be time related. It should clarify how long I need to implement that objective. When we do this evaluation process, there are a lot of errors that we might do. And one of the errors is a central tendency error, which means evaluating everyone at the same level. Like everyone is average. Why? Because I don't want to upset anyone. I don't want to waste too much time in really ranking people and really making the difference between the employees. So I'll just say, okay, everyone is at this central level. It's easier. So somehow I don't expect, let's say, too many complaints. But on the other hand, it does not help you to differentiate between employees. The halo effect is another error that I might do. And I will give you an example. Let's say the employee is very good with the customer. So has a very good and positive, let's say, relationship with the customer. But a halo effect means evaluating the employee with very high scores for all dimensions. Just because I like the employee, because the employee has very good performance in the customer relationship. But on the other hand, that does not mean that the employee has very good scores when it relates to doing reports, for example. So a halo effect means giving a positive overall score on or on rating very positively all the dimensions just because the employee is very good or very bad in a certain dimension. So let's say the employee is not very communicative, and I will evaluate the employee at a low level with low scores on the other evaluation dimensions also, just because the employee does not communicate that well. But if the person does not communicate, that does not mean that the person is not valuable. The person might be very good, for example, in computer work or in computing that of the figures that we use in our reports. The recency effect is remembering or reminding the most recent behaviors of my employees, which is again an error because let's say if we only do the evaluation once a year, then it means if we have the evaluation in April, that in March people will start being more active, more hardworking, and doing better their job. But that does not mean that we have to forget everything that happened in the I don't know, last 6 months or 8 months, which might be very relevant because I want the employee to be performant along the entire year, not only in the last month. The leniency error means evaluating everyone very positively. So giving everyone high scores from 1 to 5, giving 5 to everyone because you want to be a nice boss. But having a good evaluation does not mean being a nice boss, but giving useful feedback and useful evaluation for your employees. Personal biases are related to prejudices or my own beliefs. For example, I believe that if the employee is nice to me because they are like, let's say they know how to behave, how to act when their boss is around. That does not mean the employee is performant, but it might mean that I like the employee more because the employee pays me more, let's say, all kind of compliments. But this does not mean that the employee is better performing. Another rating error is being too strict or being too judgmental or being too critical. And as I say, a lot of the mid-level managers, a lot of the managers in Romania, not only in Romania, are too critical. So we focus more on the negative sides and less on the positive side because it's easier to see the negative sides. And I will give you an example. A lot of managers will say, you know what, if you are doing things right, I will not bother you. If when you do an error or when you do something wrong, I will let you know because this is what we want to correct, the things that we do wrong. But a good feedback, a good performance evaluation means not only paying attention to what's bad and what's negative, but being very, very careful in spotting the good side and in encouraging and motivating the employees and rewarding the employees when they do something well. And about these rewards, another question is what are the rewards that are mostly effective when evaluating the employees? And showing appreciation and giving positive feedback, in fact, is one of the most motivating um, performance appraisals that we can give. Because, of course, salary increases are also useful, but they are not as useful sometimes as you recognizing the value of the employee. As I said, an important component of the evaluation process is having the face-to-face meeting with the employee. And unfortunately, here in Romania, this is rather rarely happening. Why? Because the supervisors and team leaders usually are very loaded on the project or having like technical tasks. So sometimes they do not have time to have these meetings with the employees. During such a meeting, what you should do is listen the employee's point of view, understanding why the employee, for example, has a good performance or what helps the employee have having high or a positive or good performance, helping to set objectives together with the employee, agreeing on the training needs, agreeing on potential solutions that you might use, and also discussing career aspirations, career objectives, and setting a plan, a development plan or an action plan, which to help the employee understand what they have to do in the future. This is very useful for the development of your employees. So these meetings help understanding the employee's point of view and giving real feedback to the employees. So giving feedback means telling the employee what he or she does well, what was not that well, and what can be improved in the future. When you give constructive feedback, means giving particular examples of what was not well or what was very well done by the employee. So being specific and not general, focusing on behaviors and not on the person. So I will not tell you, you know what, you are not a good employee. I will tell you the report or that section in the report that you have done is not very good because the figures, some of the figures were not right. You did not use the statistics that were more recent, or you did not use reliable statistics. So emphasizing the specific behavior or a situation that was not right, and not just saying, you know what, you are not a good employee. So it should be a specific and focused on behaviors and not on the person of the employee. Also, a constructive feedback should be focused on what can be improved. I will not tell you that you are, you know what, you are not that, you are a bit ugly, because this is not really useful. I will think what can I tell you in my feedback so to help you improve in the end. So what can be improved by the employee? And now I would like to go to get to the practical part and to do a simulation related